Classroom integration for students suffering from mild TBIs. Students who have suffered from traumatic brain injury, also known as TBI, return to the classroom setting with a range of cognitive, psychosocial, and physical deficits that can affect their academic success and functioning. In order to properly reintegrate students with TBIs, doctors and educators must carefully assess each separate child's needs in the classroom, as well as the abilities they still have after the injury. In an article on brainline.org titled Classroom Interventions for Students with Traumatic Brain Injuries, they discuss the different services that schools offer within the classroom, as well as the typical environment accommodations that have to be proven effective. They also discuss a variety of research-based learning strategies, behavioral interventions, and instructional interventions available to different types of people and educators that work with TBI students. It is widely known that most students and children who have sustained a TBI, severe or not, eventually return to the classroom after being cleared by a physician. Depending on the degree of the injury, some return after only a brief period of time, while others require rehabilitation programs and more doctor help. Because recovery can range from several months to several years, students normally re-enter school while they are still in the recovery stages. The article proceeds to talk about intervention strategies that can assist students with TBIs and make their return to the school environment easier. In the article, they define an intervention as the systematic application of research-validated procedures to change behaviors through manipulation of antecedents and consequences or by teaching new skills. In order to properly set up a student with a TBI to return to his school system, communication between hospitals and doctors, family, and the school system are critical. This communication line should help put everybody involved on the same page, as well as set up proper medical and functional plans that are appropriate and individualized for each student. This will let the educators know whether a few accommodations in a regular class setting will work, or if a different type of intensive special education program will be required. This also helps settle the worries of the parents, as they were involved in the action plan to help reintegrate their children with the help and recommendations of their doctors. Again, in the article, it mentions how the communication should be ongoing, and these plans should only be developed after careful assessment of the student's needs, including medical, physical, cognitive, and social-emotional problems. I found that the doctors most emphasize how each person needs an individual and unique trial based on their injury and experience once they have officially been placed back into the classroom. Since their needs are forever changing, with possible setbacks, an ongoing observation is usually required to help appropriately evaluate the effectiveness throughout the year. Students who have sustained a TBI may exhibit a wide range of newly acquired deficits that can affect them in everyday life and even in the classroom. Some of the symptoms of a mild TBI are headaches, confusion, dizziness, blurred vision, and trouble with memory. More are listed on the screen, but these are just a few of the most common ones. Obviously, while these symptoms can be common in students with TBIs, each unique individual symptoms and problems that arise can vary and need to be handled accordingly. Since each student needs to be treated differently, there are multiple ways to fast-track a student suffering from a TBI's reintegration into the classroom. One of the most common ways is restructuring the classroom environment. Many doctors use this as a way to manage antecedents or consequences contributing to many behavior problems and to prevent the behavior from occurring. If sensitivity to overstimulation and focus are problems that have come up, the educator should work on creating a quiet and simplified environment. By controlling activity and noise levels, we have removed unnecessary distractors and stimulation that could have prevented them from focusing on their schoolwork. Other ways to remove unnecessary distractors may be seating the student near the teacher, dividing up all of their work or tasks into smaller sections, or removing extra materials such as pencils, books, and papers away from them so that they're only focusing on the task at hand. Students may require downtime, which allows them to properly recuperate their minds and take a break from straining themselves on thinking and comprehending, since some students struggle with that post-injury. Although it may seem easy to us, people suffering from mild TBIs have a difficult time focusing in on one task for an extended period of time. In fact, for the affected individual, it can get extremely frustrating to not have the same focus or attention span they had before, which is why an in-class aid is a good source for a student. Another good way to help out a student with a TBI would be to create a predictable and consistent routine for them during the school day and capitalize on optimal attention periods. By doing so, you take into account their need for rest breaks based on their fatigue. This is when understanding the individual that you're working with is necessary because everybody has a different amount of time that they want to sit and push themselves to focus on the instruction and schoolwork. Another way of altering the environment is to provide assistive devices. This can include technical equipment or materials like calculators, electronic spellers, or computers. As well as we learned in class, school districts have a variety of options and resources that accommodate to particular learning needs of students that return to school systems. Other modifications that already exist in a regular classroom can help TBI students to function in their usual classroom setting. Good examples would be books on tapes, larger printed books, or even graphic organizers, which visually display the information they're learning. Other helpful resources are named under the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, Section 504, which covers all students who have a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activity, which also includes learning. Section 504 of this act was the first disability act to be enacted in the United States. It prevents discrimination against people with disabilities in programs that receive federal financial assistance and set the stage for the enactment of the Americans with Disabilities Act. 504 plans are designed to help kids with disabilities learn alongside their peers instead of being taken from the classroom. For students who don't fall under the special education program but need these certain accommodations to thrive in a regular school program, they fill out a 504 plan and formalize the suggested accommodations with the help of the parents and teachers. It is reviewed yearly and is revised as their needs change in the classroom. In order to receive these services that are named under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, the brain injury must adversely affect the individual's educational performances. If a student is believed to have such significant impairments, they are referred to the Special Education Evaluation, which helps determine if specialized services are necessary to address any of their cognitive, physical, or social limitations. There is also research-supported teaching strategies that have been proven effective with students with different types of learning difficulties that may also prove useful for students with brain injuries. In an article called Tailoring Direct Instruction Techniques for Use with Elementary Students with Brain Injuries by Glang, Cooley, and Tisch, they mention using the direct instruction model, which is based on principles of applied behavior analysis that use frequent opportunity to respond, give feedback, and reinforcement that maintains student engagement and ensures their learning. Some of the named recommended steps in using this direct instructions or DI method included selecting a meaningful goal the student will need to learn and present it at the level of the student's education, provide logic to help the student understand the relevance of the skill, give clearly stated task and direction and ask the student to paraphrase these directions afterward, break tasks into small steps and demonstrate each step, provide opportunities for student response and practice at an appropriate pace, provide immediate feedback and error correction when necessary, and use verbal encouragement frequently. As you can see on the screen, I have them described a little more in depth. And now I have a video that is also from Brainline that has a woman talking about how schools can even more help kids with TBIs.
Parents don't necessarily know how to navigate a school system. It really is a different language. So if you have a social worker, a discharge planner, a liaison, that can help you start that process. You have a lot of times a child that will be referred for special education services, and those two words are foreign and not appreciated in a lot of families. So there may be some resistance to that, to explain how the referral process begins. If the child needs a resource room, if they need parapros. Schools are wonderful nowadays where they buddy kids up so that you don't even know necessarily that you're a special student because you're walking with another student who's assisting you in finding your classroom, who's assisting you in getting from place to place, who may sit close to you at lunch or at your table at lunch to ensure that things won't go awry, whether through a comment or, you don't want a disinhibited kid to say something and it turns into sexual harassment. So you have someone that's around, those services are there. Teachers can do a tremendous amount of work. They can write things out. They can have note takers. They can have the kids use planners, organizers, color-coded folders. If the child has a mood disorder, or if they have difficulty with emotions, they can use cue words. They can have them leave the environment and walk in the hall. They can come in. They can use humor. God knows kids love humor, and I think people forget that. And, you know, in order to change the topic, use that soothing voice, use humor, treat them with dignity, and get them back to where they should be within the classroom. There's so much that can be done. There's, you know, hopefully the school's open and they've either had educational seminars on brain injury or will allow someone to explain it, because it is different and it is difficult. And the teachers can learn and can assist these students in so many ways in negotiating school again.
To summarize, although some children with brain injuries experience persistent cognitive and behavioral changes, when provided appropriate resources and strategies, all students can reach their maximum potential again. With careful planning, creating the needed additions to the learning environment, and using the correct and research-proven instructional aids, most children and students can overcome most of the challenges in their academic activities. In order to continue developing programs that will simplify school reentry, teachers and educators must work together and create an individualized plan based on each individual's strengths and weaknesses.